Hello young art hubbers, what a week it has been. It feels like spring is finally in the air. And last week you were making digital art patterns using Procreate. Well, this week we're going to get our hands messy. This week we're looking at the work of American-born artist Helen Frankenthaler, who lived from 1928 to 2011. While working as a young artist in 1960s New York, Helen created artworks called colour field paintings. As the name suggests, her artworks were almost as large as fields, farm fields, and full of colour. Now, instead of painting on the easel or on the canvas, she tried something new, something quite different to her contemporaries at the time, including Jackson Pollock, who we looked at a few weeks ago. She would lay the canvas on the floor and soak into it flowing paint that seeped into the fabric. This was about painting into the canvas, not on the canvas, in the very fibres of the canvas or easel itself. And this is known as the soak stain technique. Today we're going to learn more about and experiment with Helen's soak stain technique. Are you ready? Let's find out more. Helen's soak stain technique involved her pouring thinned down oil paint directly onto a canvas. And this was normally flat on the floor, though sometimes she worked standing up. She would move the paint about with everyday objects like brushes and paint palettes, for example. She would then, at times, guide the spill of paint with a brush or sponge to create different abstract images. That means paintings that didn't represent things that we could recognise in the real world. Mountains and Sea, made in 1952, perhaps her most famous work, is a great example of this technique. Helen finished it off with some abstract marks using a charcoal pencil like the kind we use a lot in class. She once famously said, "There are no rules. That is how art is born, how breakthroughs happen. Go against the rules or ignore the rules. That is what invention is about." Here are some of her other artworks. I personally love reading the titles and trying to work out how Helen came up with them, reading into the painting for clues. What do you think about these paintings? What do you think about her colour combinations? And which is your favourite? What does it remind you of, and how does it make you feel? I'm going to talk to you about her soak stain paint technique and show you how you can have a go at this at home. For this activity, you'll need thick cartridge paper or a canvas board. You can buy this in the likes of the Range or the Works really cheaply for £1 or even less sometimes. What I'm doing here is using a damp cloth to dampen down the paper. You could also use a spray bottle with water. See how it's glistening. You'll also want some tools to help you move the paint around in addition to your hands. I've got a sponge here, and any old kitchen sponges would do. Good recycling. And as I say, your hands are key, but do take off any jewellery and roll up those sleeves. Poster paint watered down works well for this, as does watercolours and powdered paint. Now, what I am doing is I'm going to do a bit of a muddy background wash to begin with. And bearing in mind that this will be really very liquidy and you're going to have to give yourself a good amount of time for the painting to dry. Before you begin, the thing to bear in mind with this activity is that when you pour the paint, the colours will mix together. So it can be really helpful to recap in your mind the basics of colour mixing. For example, if you pour red next to green, you might end up with some brown where the paint mixes, like I've got here. On the other hand, if you put red next to blue, they'll mix to create what? Purple is right. There's no right or wrong colours to use, but it's good to know in advance what might happen. And like the Jackson Pollock drip painting technique, this is a great project to do outside. Make sure your canvas or cartridge paper is lying flat, and I've got some towels beneath to catch any excess paint that runs off. I've decided on the colours that I'd like to mix, this brilliant blue and bronze. You see how the blue is already staining, seeping out into the fibres. You can have a ball pouring and guiding the paint with whatever tools you decide to create your masterpiece. And do this mindfully, really looking at the colours. Perhaps going from cold to hot colours or dark to light. And once the paint is applied, you can carefully lift up your canvas border paper and slightly tip it from side to side and watch how the paint moves on the paper. Sometimes it drips. Sometimes it stays still. And as you see here, it will glisten in the light. You know, this could be an interesting activity to do to music. This piece of paper can then be used as a base once it's dry for more mark making activities, maybe working over the top with black ink or charcoal. Once it's dry, you could make any other marks on top and draw not abstract but more concrete images. Enjoy, everyone. One last thing you could try when your base layer is dry is to take an empty toilet roll tube, cover it with cling film, roll it in paint, and then try rolling it over the top and experiment, really. See what marks you can make. You could even use multiple colours or just one. And finally, if you're interested to experience Helen's work in the flesh for real, you could this Easter visit Dulwich Picture Gallery, where there is an exhibition of Helen's works running until the 18th of April, alongside some of Monet's, Claude Monet, who you may have learnt about in your French lessons. I urge you to go down. It's a short train journey from London Bridge, Dulwich Picture Gallery between Brixton and Peckham. Really worth the visit. Let me know if you do go and how you get on.